Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Mike at Filmboy24. If you're new to my channel, thank you for tuning in. I'm a goofball and I tend to ramble, so get ready for that. If you're not new to my channel, thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. Today I'm very excited because I took my new-ish Krasnogorsk 3 16mm movie camera and I converted it to Super 16. I also removed the loop formers. You want to see how I did it? I'll be right back and I'm going to show you. That's right, I know I have been promising for months and months and months, and now I'm finally going to deliver. I took my new-ish, I say newish, it was new when I bought it, new old stock. I have another one that's old stock, very well used, that's not Super 16. But I took this one, I shot a few rolls of film through it, tested it out. It's a beautiful camera. I love these Russian-made Krasnogorsk cameras. I love their wind-up feature. And I also really enjoy the fact that they're not that difficult to convert to Super 16. It's also not that difficult to remove the loop formers. I'm going to show you a lot more close-up and more in-depth here in just a minute. But it's not as difficult as you might think. Now, let me start by saying I did have some help or encouragement from a couple of YouTubers. One, Christian over at True Film. Two, Ruben over at the Cinematography Lab. Check out their channels, True Film and the Cinematography Lab. I've had quite a bit of back and forth with Christian at True Film. Ruben, on the other hand, is just a bowl full of knowledge. So check out his info on 16mm in general. So I had never done a conversion from 16mm to Super 16mm in my life, because most of the time you really need to send them off to a professional to have, to have that work done. You got to have the gate milled out, you got to have the lens recentered, and the viewfinder typically you need to have the new glass put in, or just there's a lot of in-depth work involved in that. I'd love to have my ARRI converted to Super 16. I just don't want to spend the money right now, and I don't want to take any chances with it either. But I didn't have a problem with this. These are very inexpensive 16mm wind-up cameras, and they happen to be relatively easy to upgrade yourself. You can buy the widened gate and the lens recentering ring pretty inexpensively for about $100 for both. 100, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on where you get it. You can usually pick them up on eBay for around there. I did just that. Now the issue is you're not going to see Super 16 through your viewfinder, short of sending it to a professional and having them retool it or whatever you do to sort of widen your plane of view inside the viewfinder. Wasn't a big deal for me. I could guesstimate on the right side a little bit more, and you'll get used to that if you do it as well. Now, I converted this a few days ago. I removed the loop formers while I was already inside the camera. And then also a couple days ago was my 17th wedding anniversary. So my wife and I went to a state park called Washington Oaks in Flagler County. I took along 2 rolls of film. These two here, a roll of 72-22 XX, and also a roll of Vision 2 250D. They're both negative stocks. This is black and white. This is color. Now, I haven't processed them both, but I did process the black and white film. I'm going to show you this film from my Super 16 camera a little bit later. Just settle down. There's no need to fast forward. I got a lot to ramble about first. So if you're interested in sticking around, seeing that film, it'll be towards the middle-ish. But before we do that, I'm going to show you what I did. Now, there were a couple of issues. We'll get to that after I show you the film, or maybe right before. I don't know yet. But before I do too much more of this, I got one thing I want to show you. For my 1,000 subscriber mark, which I forgot to show this picture, my 11-year-old daughter made this for me. Now, she did this for me. She loves art, and she's very good at it for 11 years old. She was very proud of me. I'm very proud of her. So I just thought I'd show you. She did this, and I'm going to hang it on my wall somewhere for 1,000. Now, she wouldn't have been able to do this without all of you. So why don't you take a second right now, I'll wait, and hit subscribe. I got a lot more goofy things coming up. All right, I'll put this away. Thank you, Katerina. before I get too much more of this and get, you know, the comments, why don't you just get to the point already? I'm going to get to the point already. A few days ago, I did the conversion. I did an overhead. I sort of, it's not overly comfortable trying to do the tripod overhead shot. I did the best I can. Let me show you exactly what I went through to convert this camera. All right, kids, so here we are. We are going to attempt 3 things. We are going to install a widened gate for Super 16. We are going to install a recentering ring for the lens. And we are going to remove the loop formers. Those pesky, pesky loop formers. Here's my K-3. We twist and open the top. And voila, the beauty of the inside of the K-3. Okay, there's a few things that we need to do in order to take this plate and all of these things out of the camera. Now, before I get started, I want to say I did get a lot of this information from a couple of different people, namely from Ruben over at the Cinematography Lab on YouTube, also a bit from True Film, Christian over at True Film. So thank you guys, I appreciate it. Just wanted to let everyone know that I appreciate what you guys do for this film community. So at any rate, we're going to try our best. I've never done this before. We're going to try our best to convert this to a Super 16 camera. Screwdriver. You will need a screwdriver. There's also a couple of light seals inside this camera that are probably going to need some attention. We will look at that when we get inside it. The first thing that we are going to do is attempt to set this center wheel, which I actually marked previously, but it didn't work out so well. See, Ruben has a good point. He said to sort of mark this wheel so that the outside or the main wheel part here, this is your sprocketed drive wheel. You can align it back up with this center post here because this spins freely once you take those screws out. I tried it. I didn't mess with it too much yet, but I'll get to that in just a second. This is your film trimmer. Some people take these out completely. I'm going to probably leave mine in, but it's a 2-piece deal here, this top plate and then the bottom plate here. So we want to remove this. So you take your screwdriver. It's always probably best to have a screwdriver that is magnetic. This one needs a little bit of help. I do have a magnetizer here that came with my screwdriver set. You just kind of remagnetize it here. Boom, picks it up much better. Because once you get inside here, you really don't want to lose screws in there. And I got enough screws loose as it is anyway, so I don't want any more. Whoa, so we take this out. And as you can see, it is a 2-piece. Maybe I can get it out of there. 2 pieces, one right on top of the other, like so. Now, I also want to mention that I know that I'm using autofocus on this video, so I'm hoping that things aren't going to come too far out of focus. It's basically focused on this area down here, but if I bring things closer to the camera, and I'm in very tight working conditions, because I'm not used to really filming overhead too much, but so bear with me. Well, what you want to do is you want to remove this piece right here. This it's a plastic piece, and I think what it's for is as your film is fed into this region here, this flat spot here keeps your film the right height. So when it feeds in here, it's already the right height. So this is just a little plastic piece. Boom. It just pops off of there. And you want to hang on to that safely somewhere. These little guide rollers here, one on each side. This, by the way, is the loop former. And this little plunger here, when you push it in, releases the loop formers or disengages them so that they're no longer touching the film. See, the theory behind it was to put your full spool here. The film comes off in the 9 pattern, so it comes from the bottom. You thread it through. You leave the loop formers closed. You thread it into here, and it's going to auto thread. It's going to find its way around this loop former. Take this out. or leave it in and let it go behind because you can pull it. This is your pressure plate. It will come across, it'll follow this loop guide, come back through here, and then come out, and then you thread it onto your take-up spool here. And then when you close your camera door, when you put the door of the camera down, it pushes this plunger, and it separates these loop formers so they're no longer touching your film. The problem is it's a really wonky system. It just, it's very, very wonky. I don't know how else to explain it, but they use thread or string underneath this thing. You'll see it in a minute. And these things are known to sort of scratch your film. And then, by the way, I have another K-3, and it already has the loop formers removed, and it's so easy to thread and make your own loops. The top loop a little shorter than the bottom loop, but we'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, we have this out already. This is your pressure plate. It just simply lifts out. You want to move that out of the way. The next thing you want to do is you want to remove 6 screws, and I hope everybody can see this. So you want to remove 6 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You take those 6 out. We're going to do that right now. And you want to also, as I'm taking these out, let me tell you quickly, you also want to make sure your camera is not wound. So pull the trigger. Once you get this set where you can see these 2 set screws, and I'll show you in a second, you want to release the motor. You don't want it to have any wind in it at all. All right, once those 6 are out, you will turn your camera. If you move these little guides out of the way here, you'll see the little screw in here, and I know, sorry, it's probably a little bit out of focus, but there's a screw here. I'll try to do a close-up photo so you could see these. There's 2 little screws that you can see inside here, and what we have to do, get in here, and we got to work this little screw. You don't want to take them completely out. You just want to unscrew it just a little bit. We got that side. We want to turn it. And there's one more inside here. And you want to unscrew that one a little bit. Now that both, and I forgot to mention, Ruben over at the Cinematography Lab made a good point, and what he did was he made a little mark across the top of this to sort of orient it back in the right spot again, because once both screws are loose, you can see that this will spin, this top, or this sprocket gear, or roller, whatever it is, the main drive roller, spins independent of that center post there. So it's always nice to know where it needs to be lined back up again. Now I tried making a mark. Mine didn't work out so well because you can't see it on the inside post there. We'll do the best we can to get that back to where it needs to be. So now the drive roller is loose. All of the screws are removed. The film cutter is out. The last thing we have to do, now there's a couple of washers. It's probably a good idea to sort of just tamp this down a little bit. And then you want to pull. I've been pulling from right here and over here. Some people pull from the back. And you want to sort of lift this carefully out. Try not to do too much damage over here. And you got to get it and come straight out. When you have the loop formers, I've noticed sometimes you have to pull them out a little bit. There. Ta-da! And there's that washer I was telling you about. I don't know if you can see it, but it is barely hanging on. We don't want to lose that. Both of them, good. Sometimes they'll get stuck inside this little hole here, and that's a no good. So we want to take these 2 washers and not lose them, and they go right on this post right here that has this deteriorated foam right here, as well as all of this deteriorated foam that you can see right there, right in front of the gate area, which is a no good situation. So we're going to clean all of that, and I do have some more foam, and I'm going to try my best to replace this light seal right here that has become completely disgusting. And as you can see, it's coming apart. See this piece here? So the bottom of this, or the inside of the plate, is where you can see how your loop formers work. If you push this plunger, see there's your plunger, and I'm going to put my thumb on it, or finger on it, and as you push it, you can see that string is what actually pulls it. It's pushing the string up here, it goes through a couple of little pulleys, and it separates the loop former. See there? Now on some cameras I've seen that it actually works the footage counter arm here. Mine, it's not. I've seen them where it comes all the way up, I can't remember which direction, and connects here to the footage counter arm. Mine, for some reason, does not. So what we have to do is we have to get rid of all of this unnecessary garbage here. So we are going to do that in 1 second, or maybe might be a little longer than 1 second. We have this open. Now would be a great time to clean this gook out of here. And to do that, I'm going to take a nice clean paper towel and very carefully, hopefully, without dropping too much of it down into the camera itself, I'm going to tap it with some rubbing alcohol and try to collect it. See there? Fold it over. Do it again. There. Just to get enough of it out so when we take this gate off, it doesn't cause a lot more of that to drop. Okay. Take a little brush here. Now, there's our gate. This is our regular 16 gate. I hope everybody can see that well. And again, I'm trying my best to keep my hand out of the way, but my tripod, my hand is underneath my tripod right now, in between the legs there. But here's the gate, the original regular 16. There's the little pull down claw right there. And we need to be careful of that when we reinstall the flat base that goes in here. So we are going to remove 5 screws to take that gate out. And we're going to do that right now. There it is, screw number 1. So this is a tricky one here. There we go, we got it loose. We busted it loose. And you want to be really careful with this one because this is where you can lose it down in the camera. I will say this. This screw is different than the first 2 that I took out. Let me see if I can reach them here because, again, I know I'm probably bumping the tripod. Here's the bottom 2. I don't know if you can see it around my greasy hands. And here's the top one so far. It has a nice shoulder on it, on the top of it, a bigger lip, sort of. So just keep that in mind when you put it back together. And let's see if the other 2, like I say, this is the first time I've ever done this, so let's see if this, yeah, this one's going to be the same as the one I just took out. Has that little, sort of a thicker head on it there. And there is number 5. Screw number 5, the top right one. So these top 3 screws are the same, and the bottom 2 are the same, though these 3 are different than these 2. So what we do now is pry this little guy out of here. And you just want to be so careful. I'm terrified that I'm going to mess something up. So we're going to have to really take our time. There we go. Okay, so there it is. The old gate. The new gate. See the difference? This one stops here. This one goes almost all the way to the edge. This one cuts up a lot higher. All right, well, this is some type of machined plastic here, it looks like. So, yeah, I don't think that's metal. Looks like plastic to me. So, now that we have that gate out, we are going to install our newly and freshly sanded, remember we sanded that gate, just to make sure there were no burrs and that the film hopefully runs across it nice and smoothly. So we want to be extra, extra careful, because this, I believe, is where you could really get yourself in trouble dropping screws down into the bottom of the camera. So hopefully you hadn't, like me, had 2 cups of coffee just prior to doing this. So I want to get it started. I want to put the screw in there and get it at least started. Like that. Just like that. All right. Well, we know we'll at least get one in there. And it only goes back in one way. So, and I'm not tightening that completely yet. All right, very, very, very carefully. Okay, I have the top 3 started. I'm pretty well in. All right, 1 to go, kids. Here we go. Let's magnetize a little bit. Boom. There it is. All right, so they're all actually officially in. Now, all we have to do is finish them. You don't want to over tighten them. Just get them good and snug. That's it. That is it. We have it now. This seal is worrying me a little bit. I may try to make another seal. I say seal. Yeah, I guess it's kind of a seal. It's really flaking off pretty badly. And I do have some foam that I brought out here with me that I think I'm going to try and replace this foam with here shortly. Well, I'm happy. We have our new gate in. Let me see if I can show you the gate. Not bad. Okay, now that we have this open, I know I should probably think about replacing this little seal here. However, I'm not going to mess with that. I think it's going to cause more trouble than it's worth to mess with that one. Yeah, I think we'll just leave that. I do want to think about replacing that. So, we are finished as far as I'm concerned inside the camera. So, for now, let's set it to the side. And focus on this, the inside piece of the top cover. We have to remove all of this junk and get this out of here. And so to do that, we are going to start removing. We're going to start with this screw right here that's holding the rope. And it releases the plunger. Let's remove this and this. Now, you could put the screw back in, which I might do just to, it doesn't actually go all the way through. As you can see, we took that screw out right there, but there's nothing there, so really probably doesn't matter. So we may just leave it, but we want to get that thread, or whatever the heck that is, out of there. This is the plunger here that we are going to also probably do our best in removing. Now we're taking these 3 screws out. This is going to be our top loop former, I'm sorry, our bottom loop former. I know my hands are in the way, I'm the big lug, but doing my best to kind of show you what we're doing here. Well, that just took these pieces right out, little rollers. It's a tiny little pulley. And I'm just following them in order. Another little tiny pulley. I don't know if you can see that, but that's where the string goes through. And there's a little washer underneath it, or a little washer flab or washer tab. Move that. Now we should be able to unscrew this, which I think is actually the bottom loop former. We'll take that out. Like that. And we'll remove the other one. You might keep some of these springs and things. They might be good for other projects. I have a little container that's full of these tiny little machine screws and springs and stuff like that. And we'll remove this last screw right there. And there is the mechanisms for our loop formers. Little rollers. You could, I guess we could remove this roller as well. And there they are. Those filthy, disgusting, despicable loop formers. Get out of here. Go, go. And we're making quite a little mess here, as you can see. And before I get too much more into this project, I'm going to clean it up a little bit, set this on a paper plate, and I'll be right back. Okay, cleaned up a little bit, ready to go. And what I have here, I zoomed in a little bit so you could see, I have just a little scraper, little plastic scraper. And before I do that, I was going to scrape this off, but I want to measure it first. We'll use metrics just to ballpark me. We are going to come in hot at around 100 millimeters. I think that should do it. We could probably do 95, but we'll go to 100. 100 millimeters long by roughly 8. We'll go 8 millimeters. And I'll show you what that means in just a second. So we're going to try and scrape off all of this yuck. Whew, yuck. Now this is 45, 50-year-old foam on here. And we just want to get it off of there. Much as we can, and then I'm going to finish it off with some rubbing alcohol. Might be best using that Goo Gone stuff on here. We will try rubbing alcohol on a paper towel first, just to see if we can get that off of there. All right, well, I'm going to work this for a second, and I'll be back with you. Okay, so as you can see, I got 99.38742% of all of that nasty goo and glue and all that stuff removed. I did some scraping and some Goo Gone and some more rubbing alcohol, and finally got most of it off of there. Now, what you didn't see was I took a piece of this hobby foam right here that you can get in any hobby store. It's just about 2 millimeters thick. It's just like a closed cell black light proof foam. And I used my handy dandy ruler here, and I sliced about 100 millimeters by 5 millimeters wide so that I can glue it here and make a new light seal. We'll get it as close to the bottom sort of as we can. Somewhere right in there, about where the old one was. Do the best we can, but I'm going to use contact cement right here. So while I prepare this, and it's got to cure for about 15 or 20 minutes on each surface before you stick it on there. So I'm going to do that real quick and I will be right back. All right, as you can probably see, or maybe not, hopefully you can, I did apply some contact cement here and some contact cement to the bottom side of my seal. That has to cure, if you're not familiar with contact cement, it has to cure for 15 or 20 minutes because the glue sticking to itself is, and it's an instant contact, is what makes it adhere to other surfaces. So you don't just glue something and stick it down. And while that's curing, I want to tell you that I did remove the little piece of, I think it was right here, the other little piece of, one of these little pulleys. But I took that off because it was absolutely pointless and it doesn't actually give you a hole on the other side. So I might as well loosen the weight a little bit. And then I want to deal with this plunger piece right here. And what I'm going to do, and that's this plunger that actually engages the old loop formers. So you can just unscrew this top cap like that. It comes off. And then this bottom, this piece here, just comes out like so. Now you'll still have this little shaft here, which is fine for me. One of these days I'll find, you could put some black silicone in there. That's what Ruben did with his. I'm not going to do that with this one. I'll eventually find some sort of little rubber cap or something that I can push down over the top of it. It's not threaded inside, so I can't put a screw in it. But in the meantime, I'm just going to put some black tape over the bottom of it here so that we have no issues with light. And while I am doing that, I will put black tape over the top of where the loop formers were here. Probably just a half strip. I'll slice it long ways because I'm not leaving myself a whole lot of room because of my new seal. And then I'll seal it here as well, this side and this side, so it'll be well protected from light. I did want to mention also that this is your footage counter piece here. And from what I gather, and I have another K-3 as well, and I know I've had some light leaks, and this is probably the culprit. The inner light seal foam has been demolished in there over the last 50 years, so I'm not going to put more light seal foam in there, but I am going to put some black tape sort of at a 90-degree angle all the way around this inside to sort of seal off the light here, which I think does probably just as well. So while this is drying, by the way, this glue can actually cure for an hour or two without hurting anything. So even though it'll look dry, it'll start getting a little sheen to it. You may think it's overly done, but as soon as you put those two pieces together, yeah, forget it. You better make sure you do it right the first time because they're not coming off. So what we'll do now is go ahead and put, move this out of the way. We're going to go ahead and just put some black tape over this. This is that post that we just took the plunger out of. And this is just black electrical tape. Seals very well. It's light proof. And I also forgot to mention, it's a very smart idea anywhere you're going to put a piece of tape to get some rubbing alcohol and clean it. Because I don't know if I touched it and I got my fingerprint oils and whatnot on there, but you want to get it cleaned off as well as you can first and then not touch it. Then we will take a piece of electrical tape . Now I'm a bit of a, I hope it looks good kind of a guy, so I'd like the tape to at least be somewhat straight, even though no one will ever, until at such time that I ever sell this camera and they decide to open it and look at my black tape job, no one will ever see that. But I still want it to look halfway presentable for, for me. I'm such a nerd. Okay, so there's that. We probably could get away with going ahead and putting some tape over this. So let's just do that now. Let me move it back into the frame. I apologize if I'm getting this outside the frame from time to time. I don't have my external monitor set up. So if it gets out of the frame, I'm sorry. Let's measure that out roughly. High enough. I think we'll be okay. We'll just do this. Yeah, I think that'll be just fine. We'll just lay it down just like that. And again, we're going to tape the other side as well. So there is just going to be zero chance that light's going to get in through here. But I don't want to, I got to be careful around that glue that's curing right now. I don't want to mess that up. There. So that's sealed off. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes since I applied this contact cement, so we are going for it. Here is our seal. And like I say, by itself, it's not so much adhesive, but once you add it to itself, and let me tell you, once you set this down, you better make sure you got it in the right spot, because you get one shot at it. There we go. Now, it's 2 millimeters thick, so I'm hoping it's not too thick. It does have some pliability to it, but I didn't test it first, so I'm hoping it's not too thick once I try to put this back in. But it's down. I could get it out of there if I really needed to, but it's down for now. So we went ahead and taped this. The last thing we want to do before we reinstall this is, let me get the camera back over here. If you'll remember, we had this little gear here on the top of our little spring motor, and we need to take that gear off, keep it in the same orientation, or reverse it rather, as in like this plate flips back over, so you want this little gear flipped back over onto here. Now it's got some grease and whatnot on it. I probably should re-grease it, but I'm not going to at this point. So the way this works, let me pull this up a little bit closer to the camera so you can see it. Okay, so the way this actually works is this has these little plastic clips here, and they're on springs. Now you can flip them around and you can see the little spring there. I hope you can see it. Yep. And when you flip this back around, that little spring fits into a slot in the back of this little piece here, in the back of this little clip. Yep. Now it's in the slot. See there? And you want each one of those inside their little slot, the springs inside the slot, like so. Then you want to take your gear and you want it nested in between, oops, and you want that gear to sort of nest in between these. You'll have to push them out of the way a little bit, just like that. Just like that. Do you see how, I know I'm out of frame here. Do you see how each of these little, I don't know what these are called, just little advanced levers, they come in contact and they lock into these little teeth. It's only going to go in there one way, so, so we're good to go. That's it. And when you turn this over, it's not going to come out because it's in there well. Ta-da. All right, let me back the camera back up and we'll continue, and we're going to put this back together. Okay, we got the camera back where it needs to be, and we are going to do our best to put this back in. Again, I apologize if this goes in and out of frame a little bit. I can't see my monitor from down here. Now this will float a little bit on you. This little drive gear here, or this, you know, the main sprocket drive motor. And what we have to do is we have to get this shaft aligned to the center of this little sprocket drive here. And you want to start by tilting it a little bit forward, just a little. Actually, before we do this, it might be smart to go ahead and put the black tape on here. Let's do that really quick. Seal these up. Hit them with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. Dry. I use 99% rubbing alcohol, so it takes literally microseconds to dry. And then we will cut a couple of pieces of black electrical tape. And number 2. There we go. Okay, sealed back up. No chance of light getting through. Well, maybe a chance, but very little. So again, we want to try to feed that through. And you want to get underneath the lip on your gate and carefully. Okay, guys. Okay, now once don't get discouraged. This is going to take a while to get it seated sometimes. Well, it did for me anyway. It wants to, you know, teeter-totter back and forth and whatnot. You just got to be patient with it. If you have to take it back out, always remember you got to put that little gear back up into the bottom of this thing. But once you get it seated, you put a couple of screws in it, you're good to go. Now we're going to finish off by putting all of the screws back in it. And all of these screws are exactly the same, so you can't worry about getting them mixed up. All of these 6, the initial ones you took out. Put these back in. All right, those screws are all back down in place. So this metal piece is secure. Now we have to put the screws back in this drive roller here. So we need to switch our bit out to a smaller bit. And remember, the screws are already in there. You just need to get it back where it needs to be. And this is where it's really important that you mark it, which again, I tried doing it when I first started, but yeah, my mark didn't work out so well. So you got to get it spinning or spun around till you see those little set screws. There's one. You got to get them on either side of this center post here. There's one. And there's the other. And the last thing you want to do, give it a crank. And give it a test spin. Everything seems to be moving correctly. I'm doing it at 8 frames per second just in case. We need to snap our little front guide piece in here. Put that back in. Put our pressure plate back in. And the only thing left to do for the inside of this is if you want, then you put your film trimmer back in. I want mine back in, so I will do that right now. And just remember the little piece on top here. Just like so. We'll just get it started. Get the other one started. And that will complete your trimmer going back into place, just like that. I'm going to test it, just push down. There's a little bit of play in this top piece here. You just twist that down, just like that. And that's it. It's completely done on the inside, except for some black tape around the edge of this, which I'll do here just pretty shortly. Okay, I just wanted to show you that I did thread this up with some white leader. It's double perf, I understand, and when you shoot Super 16, you want to shoot single perf, but this is just to see the movement and just to make sure everything is running okay. It's only a couple of feet of film, and we are at 8 frames per second on this one, but as you can see, everything went through just as it should have. So I'm super happy about that. We're going to close this up, and we are going to put the recentering ring on real quick, or real slow, or, well, we'll just do it. Okay, obviously the first thing you want to do is take off the lens. There we go. There is the front of the camera. We're going to, let me zoom in a little bit on this and focus it. Much better. Okay, so what we have to do, when you put this lens in there, it's centered properly for the old standard 16 gate. We have to use this recentered lens ring, which moves it over, moves the lens over very, very slightly to allow for and compensate for the new widened gate. So the first thing we will do is, very carefully, and you want to make sure that you don't get anything inside the front of your camera. I'm only doing this face up so you can see it, but you should probably be doing it face forward. And you definitely want to use a magnetic screwdriver. And on the advice of my buddy Christian, you want to probably measure the thickness of these versus the thickness of, you want to measure the thickness of this one versus the thickness of the new one to make sure they're exactly the same. Makes a lot of sense so that your lens is seated properly the way the factory intended. Okay, the screws are out. We will carefully lift this lens ring out of here, like so. And they were kind enough, the seller was kind enough to mark left and right for me. Now I'm hoping left and right means left and right when you're staring at the front of the camera. I think that's correct. And before we seat that in there, let's measure it really quick. I have some calipers here. Let's measure about 1.17-ish. And here we are about 1.13. So we are going to be probably close enough when we're talking about so minimal. So we're going to see just what happens. I'm going to hand thread these screws in to start them, just to make sure we don't lose them. Inside camera. Sorry. All 4 screws are the same, so you can't get them confused. I'm trying to get my big fat hand out of the way. I'm not left-handed, but I know my hand's in the way a lot. But it's nothing exciting. I'm putting screws in. And you just want them snug. You don't want it so tight that you're breaking anything. And there we have it. And I'm pretty sure this, its L and the R will just come off with some rubbing alcohol. I'm not going to worry too much about it yet. The only thing left to do is to put some black tape around that footage counter. But we're going to put this lens back on. Let me back the camera back up. I have to say it fits on and is oriented. The lens orients in the exact same spot that it did with the old lens mount, so that's promising. I guess the only thing left to do is to tape up that footage counter and put some film in it. And before I do all that, let me turn it back over to Mike. And there you have it. Not that difficult, just time consuming, a little bit tedious, and you got to be careful and you have to be patient. I'm not usually that patient, especially after a cup of coffee or two. But I was for that. It overall took me, I don't know, a couple of hours, maybe 3 tops, to do everything. And that's the first time I'd ever done it, so I know there may be a couple of hiccups in there, but it is the first time I've ever converted one of these. It was interesting. But let me show you something that I had talked about a minute ago, but I wanted to also show you the footage counter in here. Now, it was Christian that reminded me that you really want to tape up this footage counter inside here. There is some foam inside here, but it's going to be deteriorated, especially when you pull this piece out. It's going to fall apart and everything's going to get a blah, blah. So you really want to tape this up. I didn't show this in the other video, but I'll show you a close-up of what I did to tape that up with black tape. And I also taped up the footage counter on the outside. Now, I put a little fold on the top and bottom of the tape, so when I'm shooting, you can just kind of pull it down real quick, check out your foot. Whoa, you settle down. Check out your footage. Back up. Now, as far as taping the camera door, you really should, but I don't like to. And I'll tell you why I don't like to, if you just settle for a minute. I don't like to because I don't like tearing up the finish on my cameras. And I tape my doors of my cameras. 1 second. Better. And I tape the doors of the cameras with gaffer's tape. Now, if you've ever used gaffer's tape, and if you're a film guy or girl like me, you have, it's really, really strong. And it pulls things. So it starts pulling the finish off my camera. So I don't like to use the big 1-inch or 2-inch tape and just completely cover everything on here. Instead, I use 1/4-inch gaffer's tape and essentially just tape up the seam. Now, maybe that's wrong. I don't know. I've taped up lots of cameras over the years, and that's kind of how I do it. And even still, it pulled up some of the finish on my camera, and it's a little irritating. I guess a little Sharpie will do that. But in the future, my wife has promised to help me. She's a genius with a sewing machine. And we're going to actually just make a cover with some Velcro flaps to get at certain things. But I'm going to have a cover that goes completely around this with this viewfinder open and whatnot, just for light purposes, so I don't have to tear up my camera with gaffer's tape. Okay, my film. Yeah, my film. This is the black and white roll. This is the XX negative. It's a 200 speed film. Pretty sure when you're outdoors. Correction, it's a 250 speed film outdoors, 200 if you're using the filter inside. And so I did meter at 200-ish. Now, here's where I went wrong-ish. When I processed the film, I decided to get a little cute, right? So I put it in my 100-foot tank, and I use those metal, rack-type shelving for your garage or closets. Well, I have a piece of that, and I decided while the tank is sitting on it in the sink, I started vibrating the whole shelf a little bit to sort of give that recirculation in there. And the entire time, which was 5.5 minutes in HC 110B at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, I was rotating the center spindle very slowly, but I kind of wanted to try and emulate a machine because I'm not a real machine. So I was trying to emulate it. Well, with more agitation typically comes more contrast. Now, I do love some contrast, more so than probably most people. I'd say this film has a touch too much contrast. So I think the issue is if you're going to do continuous motion like a machine, you need to shorten your development time a little bit. I probably should have done about 4.5 to 5 minutes. It's okay, it's not bad. Now, I do have a vertical scratch. I do not think it is from the new gate because the scratch is actually on the base side, so it may have been something on the pressure plate. Pressure plate pops out. May have been a little piece of grit or sand. I have not processed the 250D yet, as I said earlier. We'll see if this also has the vertical scratch. I also have some light coming through on the non-perf side. You'll see flashes of light, and I'm still getting the sort of light flickering. So again, the footage is absolutely not perfect, like someone. But it's good enough to tell that we have a Super 16 gate. Now, standard 16 millimeter is typically 1.33 to 1 ratio, or frame size. Super 16 is supposed to be around 1.66 to 1. Then you have your Ultra 16, which I believe is 1.85 to 1 ratio because it actually uses in between the perforations all the way to the edge. I think we got a little bit wider than 1.66 to 1. I don't know why I'm pointing to this. With this, I think we're more in the 16 by 9 or 1.78 to 1 range. So anyway, keep those few things in mind and let me show you the film that I got with this. Oh, selfies. Well, there you have it. Yeah, I know I had a little bit of vignetting in the bottom right corner. That's from having the lens as wide as it will go, 17. And I was warned. Christian told me. I don't remember how far you need to zoom in before you lose that vignetting. I know it's not much, 20, 25 millimeters, something like that. But most of that, as you can tell, the little vignette in the bottom right corner is because I was all the way out, and this particular lens does not, 17 millimeter apparently does not cover the entire frame. I'm not finished. I have work to do to get this right. I will get it right eventually. Like I say, I'm going to get a cover for it. I'm going to take the pressure plate out, clean it again really good, maybe give it a 3000 or 4000 grit sand. Triple check everything in here, clean it again really good, process this film, see if I have a vertical scratch there. Got a lot of work to do. But I process my own film, I scan my own film. That's how I like to do things. It's not that I'm going for perfection. It's my golf game. It's my hobby. It's what I enjoy doing. All right, before I continue, you see my shirt? Killer. Yeah, I talked about it a couple of times in previous videos. The director of this movie, this was a very inspirational slasher, low-budget 80s, true 80s horror film for me, shot in Super 8mm film back in 1989. Well, it's released in 89. The director recently sent me a coffee mug and a t-shirt. If you're interested in checking out Killer, I'm not involved with it, by the way, whatsoever. I just love the movie. It was, like I say, it was very inspirational for me. It gave me that a little bit of boost in the late 80s to really get involved in film. Check it out, sansperf.com. I'll leave a link for that movie in the description below. If you like videos like this, I do want you to consider subscribing. It means a lot to me. It means that, you know, these videos are being done for a reason. How about leave me a comment? Let me know what you think. I know there's going to be a million questions. I'm not an expert at converting these cameras. I'll do my best, and I have some subscribers that are way better at this than me that maybe they'll chime in and help as well. And make sure you hit that like button for me. It means a lot to me. I really would appreciate it. And until the very next time that this K-3, yeah, and we're going to have this next up. See you then. We'll all see you, all of you, on the very next go-around.